Hey everyone, hope you can hear us. My name is Chris Cogswell. I am chair of the Science Advisory Board here at SkyHub. We are going to do our Q&A session here today. We're just going to wait a couple of moments here for people to get some questions into the chat if they have any. So go ahead, give us some of your questions, and we'll get started in a couple of minutes here.
All right, are we all here?
Hey, Steve.
We are all here, I think. Yes, we are. Okay, so we should be good to go then. All right, everyone. So thank you so much for coming here to this first session of our Q&A, really. For us, it's really important that our team and our endeavor, frankly, be open source, open to the public, and available to the community in a way that other projects so far have not been able to be for whatever reason, right? There's different reasons there. So these sorts of sessions, we really hope will become a regular thing that we will do for all of you to kind of give updates on where we are and the status of the product and the project generally. And also, frankly, to give people information when we have interesting data and videos and other pieces of information there to share with you all. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here with the first question. And really, some of the first questions that we think people are going to have here are, what can a SkyHub do today? Right? What does the product do so far? How many trackers are there today, and how can I get one? So for those first couple questions here, I'm actually going to have, first off, let's have everyone around the room go ahead and introduce themselves, give a little bit of info on your background, what you do for SkyHub, and then we'll go into those questions. So Steve, do you want to kick us off there?
Yeah, no problem. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, hear you loud and clear.
All right, I'm Steve McDaniel. I'm the president of SkyHub, one of the original founders. Mostly my contribution to SkyHub is kind of helping run the day-to-day operations and also developing the software for the platform. So working on developing everything that runs on the tracker and the software stack that runs in the cloud that helps aggregate the data from all the trackers around the globe. And that's kind of my 2 cents. My background is in embedded development and software development. I've done a lot of work with distributed systems, embedded devices, and lots of low-level development. So that's my background in a nutshell.
All right, perfect. Corey, you next.
Yeah, hi. So Corey Gaspard. My background is software development. Also one of the original founders for SkyHub. Primarily, I handle the web user interface for SkyHub, so front-end development, infrastructure, some hardware stuff, but that's primarily what Steve does. Just help out whenever he needs a hand. Yeah, just overall, just maintaining all of our systems, keeping them in line. So yeah, that's what I do.
All right, perfect. David, do you want to go next?
Oh, yeah, my name's David Moore. I jumped on board with SkyHub just at the end of the summer. Just got involved as an early adopter, building a hub. So far, my primary contribution has been developing the documentation for SkyHub. So working with some of the members of the team, trying to make it as clear as possible on how to build a tracker, how to purchase where to purchase the parts from, put them together, install the software, operate the tracker. So yeah, that's been my role so far.
Essentially, if you've read anything from the SkyHub team that has made sense to you, it is because David has written it. That's kind of the long and short of it. Okay, Richard, you next, please.
Yeah, name is Richard Hopf, from Austria, not in US. My background is engineering in a wider sense, and I'm responsible at SkyHub for, let's say, the hardware in a wider sense, testing hardware and reaching the point where we say that's exactly the hardware we want to have and incorporate this into the system, let's say. And I'm also responsible for the design of the enclosure that everyone knows about. And I'm open for any critics, please. Thank you.
Richard is responsible for the beautiful system that we have, those sweet pictures of this tracker hanging out there. Good stuff. Okay, thank you all. My name, in case anyone else has, or in case anyone doesn't know me already, so my name is Chris Cogswell. My role with SkyHub really is the chair of the Scientific Advisory Board. So it's my job to do outreach to the scientific community to kind of develop the structure of the testing methodology that we are working on here at SkyHub, and also think really seriously about the ways that we can, besides just collecting data, but how do you collect data in a way that it can be used scientifically, so that you're not just sort of building something that collects a lot of nice pictures, you're collecting something that collects both nice pictures and video, but also usable data and information and metrics that can then be used to prove or disprove something. So that's really my role here on the team. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna go ahead and get started here. Richard, people are already saying how much they love the enclosure, so it's good stuff. Yeah, it's pretty great, really. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started with that first question, which really, what can SkyHub do today? So Steve, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, I can definitely take that question. So today we've made a lot of progress with SkyHub, and we're really happy with where we're at. But there's a lot of work to be done, right? This is an open source project that we all volunteer our time to do. So essentially what we support right now is the Jetson platform, and we support RTSP cameras, which are commonly used as surveillance cameras. So we focus on the fisheye camera that allows us to connect the tracker to a fisheye camera and process that video stream. So I'll try not to get in the weeds too much, but we're using a computer vision software to process that video stream and running it through a machine learning model to detect objects inside of that. Today, we don't necessarily focus on what type of object it is. We just simply focus on if it's an object or not. So when you're talking about UAPs, it's kind of a difficult problem, and people have raised this objection in the past, like you can't identify UAPs, and you're absolutely right. So we're focusing on what is abnormal, what crosses the video stream that isn't an airplane or a drone. So we're really taking that focus. So when something passes over the video stream, we trigger an event, and that triggers a recording. So in conjunction with this video recording, we capture a bunch of metadata about that event. So we track the GPS location, the GPS time, and everything stamped with that data. Additionally, we have a sensor called a whip motion sensor, which is a variety of sensors in a small package that captures environmental data. So we basically bundle all this metadata and sensor data up with the video and GPS data, and we ship that data to the cloud and put it in a central database that is available to the public. Now, when I say available to the public, all of the data is under a license under the Creative Commons that allows free access to this data. We're currently working on our infrastructure to get that access available to everyone. Currently, it's available to developers and people on the science team, and we're working to expand that out so everyone can look at that and analyze it. But in a nutshell, that's essentially where we're at. We have software that can be downloaded, installed on a Jetson platform. Corey's developed a great user interface to walk through an installation and setup wizard, and that's where we're at. We basically have a release out there that people download and test. There's a couple bugs and kinks. We're working every day to get more solid and streamlined, but it's definitely in a place where people can download and test the platform.
Great. Okay, yeah. So another question that we often get is how many trackers are there currently and where are they? So I can say actually, although I'm not sure how easy it would be to show, but I actually have a tracker here right in my window currently. But there are about, what would we say, about a dozen trackers currently in existence. So they're pulling in data.
We probably have about 17. And so I'll kind of explain a little bit. So we have a development cloud that we use to test all of our upcoming features and bug fixes, which we probably have about 4 or 5 trackers that run our development platform. And then on our production instance, we have roughly a dozen trackers that are running on the production cloud.
And as for where they are, they're kind of all over the place, really. We have a interesting grouping of them in Texas, frankly, right now, which we're hoping we actually can use as sort of a test case for some things. But they're all over the place. Austria. There's one here in Boston. There's Texas, Maryland, kind of all over the United States, and hopefully soon all over the world.
Scotland.
Yep.
Brazil.
Yep.
France.
So they are everywhere right now. So, and as people build them, there'll be more and more of them out there, and they're all over the world. So it's really exciting stuff. So that's the next question. Really is.
I can jump in real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
If people are interested, I actually have a graphic that I can show everybody to kind of show where our footprint is. And this is a little bit old. So I'm going to pull this up for everybody. I'm really pulling this up. Don't worry, everybody. All right.
Let me pull this up and then we'll just end the stream.
So
that'll be it.
Do you want to enable screen sharing, Chris?
Yeah, I thought I had. Hold on a second. All right, go ahead.
All right, here it comes, everybody. So. All right, can everybody see that?
Yep.
So just to give an idea, this is a few months old. We've added a couple trackers since then. We have a pretty good distribution across the United States. Oddly enough, Texas has, I don't know why we attract so many people from Texas, but we have quite a few trackers in Texas and quite a few team members from Texas. But as you can see, we've started to get, trackers in the UK. Obviously, we have one in Austria because of Richard.
Actually, Steve, do you want to zoom in a little bit there? It's a little bit small.
Let me see if I can do that for you. Is that better?
Yep, that's better.
So we have one in Australia as well, which is fantastic to see us growing across the countries. But this gives you an idea of where we're at a couple months ago. We've added a few since then. And over this next year, we hope to see this number increase significantly. So this just gives you kind of an overview of where we're at today. All right, I'm going to shift it back over to Chris.
Very cool. Good stuff. All right. So another question, obviously, that kind of comes up naturally from that portion of all of this is if I wanted to build one or if I wanted to get involved, how would I do that? So the first, I think, important thing for people to know is that, so obviously, the goal here is to make these systems and the ability to create one as user-friendly and accessible to people as possible. So even if you are not, and we recognize that there are going to be people who want to get involved or want to help, who aren't necessarily going to be able to build trackers, maybe. And for those people, we are thinking of ways to have people get involved, things like helping with the machine learning by tagging videos, or even just having kind of a stream of the useful or the best videos that we've captured, or having kind of data available. Obviously, that is the main goal here. But for those that are willing to kind of play with software and play with the hardware here a little bit, Richard, do you want to kind of go through the process of how you would build one of these?
So first of all, I have to say, for some people, it could be a situation where they say, how much money do I have to invest? As a basic question. So basically, you can start rather low, setting it all up on your desk, and it works and it runs, and you can have that, let's say, for $500–600. But then if you want to go outside in the outdoor, you need a kind of compartment where you put it in, where it is safe and sound, and where all the sensors are pointed in the direction where we want to sense to. You can also add additional sensors so that you can, let's say, reach a couple of thousand euros or dollars at the end, then when it's fully equipped. So where you want to start, it depends right where you think you want to start. But let's say acquire some electronics, some boards. We have a list on our wiki. So you walk through the wiki and see, okay, this is the minimum version, this is the medium, and this is the max version. And you make your decisions with which part you start first. But let's say you decide to set up a basic hub. We recommend, because we just designed it and now the enclosure is in production. Of course, we recommend using this enclosure because it is rather versatile, fits all your needs, not right now, but also the needs of the future. So this is one item. The other items is, of course, the camera, the vid motion that Steve already mentioned, and all the other little stuff that's listed on the wiki. And yeah, sit in your garage and start tinkering, meaning assembling the whole thing together. What you need is actually a screwdriver. The rest should be, as far as we designed it, simple mechanics. Just put it together. Could be that you need some glue at some point, but that's exaggerating, I would say.
I will tell you that I am not mechanically inclined, frankly. But if you're able to plug like a USB into a slot and put in 4 screws, you can build a SkyHub. It really is that simple. And thankfully, we have great folks like Richard and David helping us figure out for the not mechanically inclined how to do those sorts of things. All right, so the next question here is, so if I want to get involved or if I want to help out today, how do I do that? How would I actually get involved and what can I contribute? So David, do you want to take that question?
Oh, yeah. So the best place to come and chat to us is in our chat. We've got a link on the website. If you drop into the chat, you'll land at the general channel where everybody kind of lands. And yeah, you can just start chatting away with us there. We're always there. We've got a team that's spread around the world in different time zones. So there's always somebody there. So I'd encourage you to go there first and foremost. Just to add about the documentation, we are kind of looking for help to progress the documentation. I think we always joke between us that, that we're on about our 5th or 6th, 7th, 8th version of the documentation or a different wiki. So we understand that, this can be a challenging project for some, but yeah, the documentation is going to hopefully guide you through that. And we've got great members of the team joining recently. Bob making animations, which are going to be integrated into the documentation. Hoping the documentation will also be translated into different languages as well, because this is a global project. It's a citizen science project. There's members around the world. So yeah, just encourage you to jump into the chat and get involved. And yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, really cool. Yeah, it's you can come join if you want to be part of the science effort, if you want to be part of the software effort, the hardware effort, the kind of the public outreach, I guess, or communication too. All of that is stuff we need help with. And really, please join our chat. Go to the SkyHub website. There's a button that says join the chat, and just come join and speak with us and hang out. We're always on there talking about SkyHub and non-SkyHub stuff, so it's a lot of fun. So please come join. All right, so we're getting some really good questions here from the YouTube chat too. So one here is, this one here is from Joshua Hunt. So question for the team: what got you guys interested in this topic enough to participate in something like this? It's a really good question, I think. So I'll just kind of give an initial general story, and then I guess we can each give our own reasons for getting involved in this. But I think like a lot of scientific people and a lot of folks who are interested in kind of engineering or what have you, and my background is in engineering, watching TV shows like Star Trek or movies like Star Wars or the X-Files or playing video games and stuff, the idea of pushing science to its boundaries and even maybe thinking about things like why do people have these sorts of reports that come in and everything else has always been really interesting for me personally. And I think that's a commonality amongst the team. We've all been intrigued by these stories. Some of the team members are people who have had experiences. Some of us consider ourselves to be more skeptically minded. That would be myself, for example. But overall, we are all interested in this because we believe that there is value in doing this kind of study, right? There's a reason to do this. And so if we can help, and we think we can do something cool with all of this, then why not get involved? All right. Anyways, that's my own kind of spiel. Take it away, whoever wants to take it away.
I guess I'll jump in.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
So yeah, I've always found the UFO topic interesting, right? So like, I'm a sci-fi nut. I like sci-fi movies and sci-fi shows. I've always been somewhat interested, and I'd catch the occasional documentary about it. But when the Tic Tac video came out and the 2017 New York Times article, you saw credible people come out on stage, and you saw Luis Elizondo and Chris Mellon, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm like, is this for real? Or like, are they serious? There might actually be something to this. So I started to get a little more interested, and as time went on, I read a couple books, watched more documentaries, and it's just something that I looked at, and there's a lot of information out there, but there's not lots of good evidence for UAPs and UFOs. And over time, I started to realize that more and more. So that's kind of my desire started to build to approach this scientifically and maybe look into UAPs from a slightly different perspective, where it's a completely data-driven approach using proven methodologies like science to help solve the problem. So really, my hope in all this is, can we collect the data to help substantiate UAPs so the mainstream scientific community can also jump on board and get involved in this. And that's really my goal. Either we produce a data set that tells a very compelling story about UAPs, or we produce a data set that basically gives natural and prosaic explanations for most of the stuff we're seeing. And either outcome, I think, is a big win, in my opinion. And that's basically my goal here, is just to see where the data leads.
I'll go next, Chris. So like Steve, I'm also big sci-fi nut. Watched X-Files growing up. Always sort of interested in the subject, but never really had a compelling drive to go out and do research or anything like that. Until I had a sighting with my family, and just something in the sky couldn't explain. Pretty much left it at that, and just slowly started doing research online, just to try and explain, what did I see? I think that probably happens to a lot of people. You see something, you can't explain it. I spent maybe a year doing research, which I found there was no real place to do good research. There's no real data out there available. I mean, it's a mess. I mean, we all know it. So, I mean, for me, the reason SkyHub makes sense is because it's my way to find the answer. And I think that's across the board at SkyHub, you're going to we've got people across the board in beliefs of what's really going on. But I think the best thing about SkyHub is that all of us agree that the scientific approach is the way to find the answer. So for me, that's the reason. I'd like to know, what if I can capture what I saw again and show it to people, that would be great. But ultimately, the goal is to collect that data set Steve mentioned and do real research. And my skill set just happened to fit sort of what the project needed. So so that's why I'm here.
Guess I can jump in. Yeah, the sci-fi definitely chimes with me, but yeah, no, I've always had an interest in nature and the environment. In my academic work, I do some research on environmental things that happen in the environment, environmental sound. So my real interest kind of in UAP started with the New York Times article, as Steve mentioned there, Lou Elizondo, Christopher Mellon, kind of really changed the narrative on it, I think. So I came across SkyHub, and I think it's got huge potential, observational science platform, capturing lots of different data, and most of the objects are probably going to be known to us, but interesting nonetheless. I could still see, as a scientist, how that data could be used. So that's my kind of secondary interest in SkyHub, is that you could perhaps use that data for other projects as well, and advancing science in other areas.
Absolutely. So Richard, you are last but not least.
Hey, if I listen to your stories, I think, oh man, am I old. I saw UFOs when I was a little boy in the 60s. And no cameras, no telescopes. It was brutal. You couldn't tell anyone because, and today my situation is, I spend a lot of time in the Alps in summertime, especially, and you got that grand heaven above you. You see that sky, that night skies is incredible. And you see those things with the naked eye. I mean, I have a night vision scope and so forth and all this stuff, but you see them with the naked eye. You see them zigzagging across the sky with the speed. There's something, and we just want to know what it is.
100%. So another really cool question here from the chat, and actually this is one that we get a lot of as well, is and this is one actually that I think I can kind of take pretty well. So kind of two related questions. The first one is, if I want to set up a tracker, in my home, and then I got a buddy down the road who wants to put up a tracker as well, and they're a couple miles away, could I do things like triangulation? And the answer to that is yes, we believe you could. We are still working on that. However, you can imagine that the amount of geometric data and sort of flight data that you can get out of a system like this will increase with the amount of trackers that are there. Yeah, and of course, up to a certain point, the number of trackers will simply just be more coverage. But things like triangulation, things like altitude analysis, relative size of object, those sorts of questions are going to be possible only with multiple cameras. Other things and that's frankly why we are starting with simple analysis methods to tell if something is interesting or not, frankly, right? So you can think there's been one of the things Richard just mentioned was zigzagging, right? That's what we would call it non-ballistic motion, if we were kind of going to give it a term. Yeah, it's non-ballistic motion, but zigzagging is what you mean, right? Is what we mean. But essentially, you can think that anything like a commercial aircraft, even say a drone, things like that, they'll have limits to how quickly they can accelerate and deaccelerate. We expect them to have bounds to how often they can sort of move and stop and then move and then stop and those sorts of things. That unidentified objects or objects that we would find interesting may not have those same boundaries. And so those are some of the kind of low-hanging fruit metrics, I suppose, is the way that I would say it, that we're going to be looking at, right? So a simple answer to that question about triangulation is yes, it is something we want to do, and it's something, frankly, that is going to be very important for us to do. a single tracker will give you good data. And of course, that's great. But in communities like, say, in Texas, where we already have so many trackers in place, that's where things are going to be really interesting, right? Another kind of interesting idea would be, say, for example, bringing a number of cameras or a number of units to a known hotspot, quote unquote, or an area where we want to target, right? Data analysis. That's another thing that we've been thinking about that we want to try to get off the ground. But, you know, in some ways, all of this is very, what's the word? All of this is very affirmational, like not affirmational, but hopeful. We hope to be able to do those things. Let's get the system working right now. Right? Let's get it going first before we can, you know, walk before we can run, frankly. Okay, another good question. Yeah, go ahead.
Excuse me, may I add here? We see it as an evolutionary way.
Yes.
We start with something where we have, let's say, professional guesses about. We start with equipment that is available. It's not military. It's something that you can really get on Amazon or somewhere else, other stores. And yeah, it can also happen that in the future the system looks different, because we see it as an evolutionary path that we take. New technology that comes up will certainly, if available and price achievable, will certainly incorporate. So we see SkyHub not as a system that is frozen in time, but as something that is always changing itself to adjust to new technology that's coming up.
Absolutely.
And one more important thing, because this is related to the question, triangulation. I always get the question, what's the distance? How far can it reach? What can I track? What is the capability? So there are certain different sensors on board, and those different sensors have different distance qualities. When you see the fisheye, for example, this is a hemispheric tracker scanner that scans objects that are in 800 degrees anywhere above you, but it is certainly limited by resolution. So the distance to detect, let's say, a 747 on a fisheye is at the very moment, let's say, 10 kilometers. So if you have a second hub in the neighborhood, a friend of yours, 5 kilometers next village, you can triangulate that. And when you consider other things like passive radar, you go up to low orbit. So there are other things, pan-tilt zoom cameras, it's all in between. So we try to capture anything from close contact to low orbit.
Absolutely. So actually, that's another question here someone asked was, I mean, basically a version of this same question, where is it practical to put trackers, right? Will these work just as well in, say, a suburban or city setting where there might be light pollution as they are, say, in, you know, Richard's beautiful mountain retreat, right? where there is little light pollution. One answer I will give, and actually this is kind of an interesting case of data we've already collected, is we have a tracker out of Houston that was able to identify the International Space Station, right? So that's kind of a sense for you of how much clarity you can get. Of course, there are going to be things like weather conditions, like clouds. If there's cloud coverage that day, you're probably not going to get a lot of good data. However, we're thinking of ways to do things that, so I guess I'll back up a little bit. SkyHub will not only be using a fisheye camera, we are constantly evaluating other sensor packages, other pieces of camera technology, and other ways of collecting this data that we can think of to add to the platform, essentially. And so you can imagine that in cases where maybe there is a lot of visible light pollution, there may be filters or there may be camera types we could utilize that would limit that pollution out in ways that others maybe would not be able to. So it is something we're considering, and frankly, if you're an optics expert or you know somebody who is an optics expert, please join the team. We'd love to think about those sorts of problems with everyone. So one other question here that we see a lot of things is, so what kind of data have we already collected, right? What have we already done? So we're having this live stream and, you know, maybe that's of interest. Steve, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can jump in there. So We've actually collected a fair amount of data so far. To date, I think we have roughly 40 to 50,000 videos between our production and development platform. We actually do have some videos on our YouTube channel and on our website from that was collected from Houston, Texas, from one of our trackers of something that is unidentified. We're not quite sure what it is. It's a very interesting video. It doesn't appear to be a plane. It's possible it could be a drone of some sort, but I highly recommend jumping to skyhub.org and watching that video. And, you know, one of the things that we want to work towards in videos like that is identifying what can we identify, what do we fail to identify, and what technological improvements can we make to assist in identifying that. Now, a little bit more about the data. We have all of our data in a Kibana database and MySQL database in the cloud, and we've collected thousands and thousands of readings from GPS devices and WIT motion devices and captured all of the event metadata, and all of that is available in that database. And if there's any science guys out there that would like to jump onto the science team, just catch up with Chris and we can get access to individuals to kind of review and analyze that data.
Yeah, 100%. So, and that actually relates to another question here we saw is, actually here, let me see where I can find it there. So questions about kind of the machine learning platform or the model that we're doing. So I can speak to that a little bit here, and anyone else that wants to jump in, please do so. But you can admit, so it's sort of an interesting scientific question to ask, what does an unknown thing look like? That can't really scientifically be answered. You know, it sort of reminds me, I had a neighbor when I lived here when I was in grad school in the Massachusetts area, who one time his kid was just outside and I asked him how he was doing and he said, well, I'm doing great, but today's not my birthday. Right? Like, okay, it's not, you're giving me negative information. It's very strange, right? It's hard to describe what an unknown event or what an unknown aerial phenomena should look like without adding in your own personal biases. So even the assumption of zigzagging or non-ballistic motion, that is an assumption we're making in some ways. That is adding data or adding a constraint to these systems that maybe we shouldn't be adding. So instead of looking for unknowns, what our system will do is look for knowns, and then essentially it'll whittle away the knowns until all we're left with is a hard center of unknown events. So in other words, we take 10,000 videos and we say, okay, well, 4,000 of those are airplanes and 3,000 of those are organic things like bugs or birds. And, you know, 2,000 of those are drones, say, or objects in space that we think are understandable or whatever. And you keep breaking down and down and down until all you're left with, say, are 100 really good cases that now you can actually look at and see, are there commonalities in those pieces of data, right? So the structure of kind of the way that our machine learning approach will look is not looking at what an unknown looks like or making assumptions initially, but rather looking at knowns, being as strict about our knowns as we possibly can, and then ending up with a smaller set of unknowns, if that makes sense to people. So that's kind of the general way that we're thinking about doing this. In terms of kind of our, so far, what our hit rate is, let's say, like how many unknowns have we had to knowns? I don't even think we haven't even looked at that at this point in time, because we are still working on, frankly, getting the system able to encounter and categorize knowns versus, one type of known versus another type of known. So at this point, to say anything about what we've captured would be a little, a little irresponsible, I guess, is what I would say. Right? We don't know yet what we've captured. We have interesting videos. We have some really cool data that has come out from all of this already, but our goal is really to be as careful and scientific about this as possible, so that when we do find something interesting, it's really interesting, right? When we bring you the first good video, we want it to be a good video. We don't want it to just be something that the next day, people are able to pick apart on Twitter immediately or whatever. So that's kind of the goal.
Plus the associated data.
Yes, absolutely. Plus the associated data, not just the video. Yeah, good. Very, very good point, Richard. Okay, so this one here is from John. So has your team considered collaborating with camera manufacturers such as Psionics to create a purpose-built IR imaging system? One can imagine the enthusiast or researcher market could be substantial. Corey, do you want to kind of go over, I guess, why we decided on open source as the methodology a little bit, and then talk about, I don't know, how do you get a tracker? Will we be selling trackers? Will we be selling cameras? Those sorts of questions.
Yeah, I'll take that. So the open source approach, so just to start off with that, the one thing we'll say, like Richard mentioned, is that we don't see the platform as fixed. It's an evolutionary platform. So, if you're interested in, I don't know, just a particular type of sensor, say, for example, that's what we're looking for. We would like people to be able to contribute, bringing in their expertise, adding to the platform. In the long term, right now it's Steve and I are the primary developers. If it's just he and I doing this, it's going to take a while. So we're really looking for developers and engineers to come in and contribute to this, because whatever their interest is, if you're interested in bird watching, you want to track meteors, the platform is open for whatever people want to do. Like you mentioned, we're going to be looking at trying to categorize those knowns. So in doing so, that also means that we'll be able to publish that data as well. So the open source part of what we're doing really is just, we felt like, first off, that it'd be hard to build a system closed. I don't know that we would get the usage that we wanted out of it. So that's one reason why we did that. The second part is because we truly want this to be a global community effort. Everyone can contribute, whatever your specialty is, come in and add that to the platform. I'm sorry, Chris, I missed the second part of your question. What was?
So I mean, basically, I think you've answered it though. Okay. The second part really was about trying to work with specific camera manufacturers to make like a SkyHub branded camera or something.
Yeah. So let me just kind of talk to that a little bit. This may have been mentioned already, but really we're looking at consumer grade hardware, and we've done that because it's a DIY project. It's got to be available. It's got to be on the market. It's got to be cheap. Long term, can we establish those relationships? I think it's possible, especially if the demand is big enough. Then we as a group, as a community, can go to these manufacturers and say, hey, look, we got 10,000 users here. Can you help us brand a specific camera? But at this point, the approach that we had to take is that we're supporting, the libraries that Steve has put together on the software side currently only support the security camera type RTSP cameras, but we are expanding that. So eventually you'll be able to plug, cameras directly into the boards. And yeah, so it's open source in that regard too. So whatever cameras are out there, if we don't support it, come in and add the driver and we'll have support for it. So those two questions are sort of tied together, like you said. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that I think that 100% answers it. Yeah. One thing I do want to say too, just kind of consistently, is this is a labor of love, right? Like, we're all doing this because we think this is interesting and we think it's worthwhile to do. And because I guess none of us want to see our families on the weekends anymore. So that we're doing things like this and, kind of thinking about these sorts of problems. But really, this is a labor of love. And so we want to be able to do this in a way where if you develop a better if you come up with a better type of hardware to do this, great, do it. Add to the team, add to the project. We don't want to kind of limit, I guess, innovation and the agility of the project overall by focusing in or getting lumped into like one type of camera or one type of thing, right? Like the whole point of this is so that, even if this project fails, even if we can't finish this, someone could come along and pick up where we left off and do this still, and that's really important because so far I think in a lot of these sorts of studies, it's been very focused on like one sort of thing or one type of unit or whatever. And then if it doesn't happen or it gets stalled, it's stalled forever. That's not what we want to see happen here. Another question that keeps coming up here is, so someone is asking, are there places where these would not be good to go? Like if you live near a military base, should you put a SkyHub camera there or not? That's a really good question. We don't have Adam on the call. Maybe we should.
Well, I can kind of jump in there, and obviously we can't give you a canned answer about that. It's largely going to depend on the rules and laws of where you live. So it's important that, and I keep this in mind, and I think this is important at SkyHub, is we care about people's privacy, and we're not out to break laws. So before you deploy a unit, it's important to remember that it's capturing data, and it could be recording, and you don't necessarily want to record yourself or your neighbors and upload it to the cloud. So definitely be mindful about people's privacy and about the laws where you live. I mean, before you set up a platform, just make sure that it's allowed to do so. For instance, in the United States, it would be legal to put it near a military base. It's considered public property and there's public easements, but definitely, do your due diligence, look into the laws, don't get yourself into an undesirable situation. So yeah, definitely do your homework before you deploy a platform.
Yeah, don't break onto Area 51 and install.
Right.
Right. Near Area 51 is fine, not on Area 51, right? Yeah, and that's actually one other thing too. We are developing this with, like Steve said, a mind towards security and safety and privacy, frankly. If you have one of these out there on like your roof or anything else, we want it to only be collecting data on objects in the sky, right? And so that's really where all of the focus has been. And that is another reason why I think keeping it open source is so important, so that if there are already questions or whatever, like look at our data, look at our software, right? Look at what we can do. All right, we've got 10 minutes here left for what we're going to be doing this. So another question here is, so this is actually kind of an interesting one. Is there a fear or not a fear that a large technology company may copy our product? So this might be kind of...
Yeah, I'd love to answer that.
Yeah, so actually, I kind of first want to give a little bit of a history on this sort of product, and then Steve, take it away, please. So actually, the SkyHub, interestingly enough, if you look in the scientific literature on what sort of projects have been done in the past on tracking of objects in the sky, there was early interest in this in what is known as sort of near Earth orbit security or space security. And actually the Space Force, the United States Space Force, just got an award for an engineer for a project where they are looking at and thinking about kind of space security, right? So what I mean by that is, if you're going to launch a rocket up into space, if you don't know where all the satellites are and where all the other objects in our Earth orbit is, then there's a very good chance that you're going to collide with something, and that's bad. So systems like SkyHub in the past, that's what they've been developed to do, is understand and track satellite cameras as they move around. And so the earliest versions of this sort of project were Baker-Nunn cameras. That being said, most of the interest from large companies today is on looking the other way, so drones with cameras attached, looking at what's going on the ground. So that's kind of the short answer to this. There isn't a lot of money to be made in looking at the sky, so to speak. That being said, Steve, please take it away.
So, the the specific question being, would we worry about someone taking our idea, especially a company going to monetize this into a product? I would love for that to happen. I think that would actually be a great outcome. If you could actually generate enough interest and buzz about this type of technology to where people would actually try to compete on the open market with a product you could just go order and have shipped to your house, I think would be a huge win. I think I'd prefer that they come in and just sponsor us and fund our development and efforts here. But that's one of the reasons that we released the code under such a liberal open source license. Our software license allows people to take it and use it for commercial use because we want people to build the technology to do this. The only reason we're doing it is because it doesn't exist. If it existed, we wouldn't be doing it. So if we can urge private companies to take this on themselves, participate in our development, I think that's a win. Any way you look at it, if somebody pursues this technology, it's beneficial to all of us.
100% agree. So another question here that we got was, and yes, thank you, Science Bob, space situational awareness. Thank you, Bob, for jumping here in the chat and giving me the words I was looking for there. Yeah, so one other thing that is definitely really important, I think, for all of this is, and one question we've gotten here in the chat a couple times, we've gotten emailed to us as well, is what is our status or how are we thinking about working with other groups doing similar work, right? Like, MADAR, like say, just other investigative bodies and things like that. What is our status there, or what do we think about it? Does anyone want to take that question, give that answer quick?
I can respond to
Go ahead.
A sliver of that. So when we develop our platform, we definitely want to make it open, right? So we want people to be able to integrate different functionality into the platform. So if somebody's developing another app or a research tool, we want to have public interfaces and APIs that potentially we could send alerts when an event happens in a geographic region. So for instance, if MADAR wanted to correlate their data with SkyHub data, they could come register for this API and say, anytime there's an event in this like geofence, notify MADAR. Those types of integrations are useful. Even if it's a sightings tool like MUFON, perhaps someone could make a tool that integrates the two, that they could help correlate SkyHub data with MUFON sightings. So we'll do what's necessary to give people access to the data and callbacks and webhooks that would allow them to make those types of integrations. As long as we can collaborate across the community, there's really no way to lose. It's only beneficial. So, and I'm sure as we continue to progress, people will have ideas that we haven't yet thought of to help collaborate between different projects.
Yeah, 100%. And that's actually one thing too that we've been doing a lot of, is reaching out to other groups or having discussions with researchers, both in this field, but also just across the sciences. Someone in the chat mentioned things like if we were, we captured something interesting, say, for example, could these units be used for things like bird migratory analysis or things of that nature? Like, absolutely, they absolutely could. This sort of unit, the kind of general platform that we're building here, you can think of, I guess, as sort of two things, right? There's the hardware portion, which we're kind of, we're finding ways to build hardware that'll work with our software, but then the software itself and sort of the machine learning tool that's actually going to be categorizing videos and things like that, that is on its own useful for different things, right? So the goal here, and I think the goal of any kind of well-managed engineering project, frankly, is make it so that each individual portion is still useful on its own, even if the whole doesn't maybe work out the way you think. So that's kind of the goal here, and it's why we want to work with so many other organizations. So thank you all so much for coming to this. So we have about 6 minutes here left. So one question here from, so surely the first people who would capitalize on this would be military. Once they get on this tech, it would more than likely not be available for us. Are the military not currently using this tech? So a really good question. Those initial camera systems, the Baker Nunn cameras, were researched under the military in some cases, essentially, and through NASA. The problem with something like this, like trying to keep something like this from the public, is that frankly, anyone with a camera, if you really wanted to, you could go outside and tape a video camera to a pole and have it looking up at the sky all night. You know, so kind of the overall thing, the overall process that we're doing, we're making a more complicated and useful version of that same sort of technology. So, you know, the cat is kind of already out of the bag, I suppose, is what my answer would be there. So last question here, I think, and it's a good one, is one common misconception is that at the end of the day, when all of this process is finished, people will be able to buy a single pre-built SkyHub unit. Can we, let's just talk about that. How would someone at the end of this be able to get involved and get a unit?
Yeah, at the very moment, it's all do-it-yourself, as we know.
Yes.
If you want to take it from the shelf, it implies that there is someone who brings it into traffic, into the commercial traffic. So that has to be a company, otherwise you're not able to. And you have to stick a lot of different technologies together. By doing this, you create a new thing, and you have to walk through this procedures where you have, we call this the TÜV. It's a protocol from an authority that signs and say, okay, this technology is okay, you can now go into traffic, into circulation. That's a process that's certainly not that easy, considering the amount of different electronics we are having inside. But still, it could be business. Could be that, let's say, in a year, someone comes up and says, okay, I can integrate it in one thing and I sell it worldwide. I think we'd love to see that coming.
Yeah, so I think that another version of that same answer is, right now, if we were going to have people order units and then have them sent over to them, it would be one of us on this call and a couple of other people building them in our homes and then sending to you. And frankly, that is just not, it's not possible, right? It's just not feasible.
One thing to consider is, and if everyone's not aware, everyone involved with SkyHub is currently a volunteer. So we don't have any full-time people in SkyHub. Mostly this is all, you know, a lot of the development has been covered by our personal time and expenses to help build the platform out. Everybody on this call has invested lots and lots of time and money, right? So if we get into the business of trying to build people trackers and support them and ship them, it's a lot of cycles. It's a lot of time. So in the future, potentially we could build and sell pre-built boxes, but like Richard said, we really have to let this work out incrementally and organically and see where we're at in the next few months or, you know, next year or so. It would be great if we had a partner come along to help tackle some of those big engineering and integration efforts. But today, the best way to do this is to grow organically and keep pushing it as a DIY effort. And all the time, we're constantly improving the system. We're simplifying certain aspects. We're complicating others. So it's just something that we continue to try to improve.
100%. So yeah, that's and actually one thing that's coming up here is people asking for maybe local meetup groups to build one for their local community. We love it. Love the idea.
Great idea.
Yeah, we would love to see that kind of thing happen. Any way we can help have that happen, please do let us know. And actually the last question here, I think, which is a really good one here from Andrew Hall, which thank you so much for your support here in the chat, man, is how often do you plan on doing these live Q&A sessions? So we hope to be doing them relatively regularly. If there is a lot of if there's a lot of interest from the community, we're happy to do them, once a month. But at this point, we're kind of planning on doing them sporadically across the year, maybe, once a month, once every 2 months. But anytime something big happens and there's a big development, we are going to have one of these so people can come, have their questions answered. I was going to say have their answers questioned, although I guess there's a little bit of that going on too, which is all good. But we want to, again, the goal for all of this is to be as open and as transparent as possible, because for people who are donating to this cause, or people who are giving time or building units or things like that, it is so important to give you the answers that you deserve, frankly, for supporting us. So that is really the goal of doing these sorts of things. With that, team, any last thoughts or things you want to say?
Yeah, definitely. So we've basically been, we've all given a large part of 2020 to this, and, we're starting off a new year to continue to build this product and get it out to the community. I implore you, if you're a software developer, an enthusiast, an engineer, come join the team. The development on this has been so much work. And I know Corey and I would appreciate other developers, if you're a JavaScript developer, a C developer, or, a Linux engineer, or even, a hardware guy, documentation, you're a scientist, jump into the team. If you don't have the time, but you have, extra money to contribute to the project, jump over to our Patreon and throw us $1 a month, $5 a month, and help cover the cost of our cloud cost to host the free and public data set that we're building for the community. Every dollar helps, and every hour you can contribute is pushing us closer and closer to our goal.
Well said. All right. Well, with that, we're going to end this live session. Thank you everyone so much for coming on and talking to us. Really, it went better than we ever could have expected. And we are so thankful to be part of the community and so excited to be moving forward here. Thank you all so much. As always, any questions or comments, please do send us emails. You can reach us at team@skyhub.org. That'll send an email, obviously, out to everybody. You can join our Rocket chat. Go to SkyHub, the website, and check it out. Find us on Twitter. And yeah, we will hopefully talk to you all soon. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.